What if I told you that 11 men pulled off what the FBI called the crime of the century, and then kept their secret for 6 long years? Welcome to Sherlock Mode. January 17, 1950. The evening air in Boston was bitter cold. Snow crunched under footsteps as workers hurried home through the narrow streets of the North End. Inside the Brinks building on Commercial Street, 5 employees were ending another ordinary day, carrying heavy sacks of cash and checks to the company's safe on the 2nd floor. These men had no idea they were about to become witnesses to the largest robbery in American history. The Brinks Company was trusted across the nation to move millions of dollars safely. But tonight, that trust would be shattered in ways no one could imagine. At exactly 7:30 p.m., the quiet was broken, not by loud crashes or shouting, but by something far more terrifying. The soft whisper of rubber soles on wooden floors. The gentle click of doors that should have been locked. 5 figures emerged from the shadows like ghosts. Each man wore a navy peacoat, gloves, and a chauffeur's cap. But most chilling of all were their faces, completely hidden behind Halloween masks. They moved with the precision of a military unit, each step planned, each movement rehearsed. The Brinks employees looked up from their work to see these masked figures pointing guns at them. No words were spoken. No demands were made. The robbers simply gestured with their weapons, and the terrified workers understood immediately. One by one, the employees were forced to lie face down on the cold floor. Their hands were tied behind their backs with rope. Adhesive tape was placed over their mouths to silence any cries for help. The robbers worked in complete silence, as if they had done this 1,000 times before. What happened next would haunt investigators for years. The masked men had somehow opened at least 3 locked doors to reach the 2nd floor. They knew exactly where to go, exactly what to take. This was not a random crime. This was the result of months, maybe even years of careful planning. In less than 20 minutes, they had stolen more than $1.2 million in cash and another $1.5 million in checks and securities. A total of $2.7 million vanished into the Boston night. In today's money, that would be worth over $25 million. As quickly as they had appeared, the robbers melted back into the darkness. No fingerprints were left behind. No witnesses saw their faces. No one heard them arrive or leave. It was as if they had never existed at all. When police arrived minutes later, they found a scene that defied explanation. How had these men bypassed multiple security measures? How did they know the exact layout of the building? How had they escaped without a trace? The FBI immediately took over the case. This was not just a robbery. This was a challenge to everything law enforcement thought they knew about crime and security. Agent after agent was assigned to the case. Hundreds of interviews were conducted. Thousands of leads were followed. But for every clue they found, 10 more questions arose. The robbers had worn navy peacoats, but thousands of men in Boston owned similar coats. They wore Halloween masks, but the masks could have been bought anywhere. They used gloves and soft shoes, leaving no fingerprints or distinctive footprints. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The trail grew colder with each passing day. The FBI was facing the possibility that this perfect crime might never be solved. But they refused to give up. This case became an obsession that would consume them for years. Meanwhile, somewhere in Boston, 11 men were living with the weight of their secret. They had pulled off the impossible, but now they faced a new challenge. How do you spend $2.7 million stolen dollars without getting caught? The answer was simple. You don't. The heat from the FBI investigation was too intense. Any large purchase, any sudden change in lifestyle, any suspicious activity could expose them all. So they waited, and the money remained hidden. But secrets have a way of eating at people's souls. Paranoia began to set in among the group. Who could they trust? Who might crack under pressure? Who might betray them for a reduced sentence or reward money? The FBI knew that time was on their side. Criminals make mistakes. They get careless. They start spending money they shouldn't have. And eventually, someone always talks. The question was not if the case would be solved, but when. 3 years passed. Then 4. Then 5. The FBI had interviewed over 5,000 people. They had followed thousands of leads. They had spent more money investigating the crime than was actually stolen. But still, no arrests were made. Then, in 1955, something unexpected happened. 2 of the robbers, Joseph O'Keefe and Stanley Gusciora, were arrested in Pennsylvania for completely different crimes. They were caught burglarizing homes completely unrelated to the Brinks job. O'Keefe found himself in a Pennsylvania prison, watching the years of his life slip away. He reached out to his former partners in Boston, asking for help with bail money. After all, they were rich men now. Surely they could spare some cash to help a friend. But the response he received was not what he expected. His former partners, including Anthony Pino and James McGinnis, wanted nothing to do with him. They were afraid that any contact might expose them all. O'Keefe was on his own. This was the crack the FBI had been waiting for. They began visiting O'Keefe regularly in prison, not to threaten him, but to listen. They knew that betrayal cuts deeper than any knife. A man who feels abandoned by his friends might be willing to abandon them in return. At first, O'Keefe claimed complete innocence. He had never heard of the Brinks robbery. He didn't know anything about any missing money. But the FBI agents could see the anger burning in his eyes. They knew that anger would eventually overcome loyalty. Month after month, the FBI agents returned. They weren't pressuring him or making threats. They were simply there, patient as saints, waiting for the moment when O'Keefe would realize that his silence was protecting men who had already abandoned him. During 1955, O'Keefe sat in his cell and did something that would change everything. He thought about loyalty and betrayal. He thought about the friends who had left him to rot in prison while they enjoyed their freedom and their wealth. He thought about spending the rest of his life in prison while his former partners lived in luxury. He thought about justice and revenge. And slowly, very slowly, a decision began to form in his mind. January 1956. 6 years after the robbery, O'Keefe called for the FBI agents. When they arrived, they saw something different in his eyes. The loyalty was gone. The silence was over. O'Keefe was ready to talk. What he told them that day would finally solve the crime of the century. There were not 5 robbers, as witnesses had reported. There were 11 men involved in total. 7 had entered the building, while 2 others waited outside with getaway cars, and 2 more served as lookouts. O'Keefe named every single one of them. Anthony Pino, the mastermind who had planned every detail. James McGinnis, who had recruited the team. Joseph McGinnis, who had helped with the getaway. Thomas Richardson, Adolphe Maffei, Henry Baker, and Stanley Gusciora. He told them about Vincent Costa, who had served as a lookout from a nearby rooftop. He revealed the roles of Michael Geegan and Joseph Banfield. And he explained how they had spent months studying the building, learning the routines, planning every single detail. The FBI learned that the robbers had actually been inside the Brinks building dozens of times before the robbery. They had stolen keys, made copies, and learned every lock and every alarm. This was not a crime of opportunity. This was a masterpiece of criminal planning. Armed with O'Keefe's confession, the FBI moved quickly. Search warrants were issued. Arrests were made. And then came the discovery that proved everything O'Keefe had said was true. In June 1956, the FBI received a tip about John Bocelli, nicknamed Fat John. A criminal in Baltimore told them that Fat John had been trying to pass stolen bills from the Brinks robbery. When they searched Fat John's office on Tremont Street, they found something incredible. Hidden behind a wall panel was a metal container. Inside were packages of bills wrapped in plastic and newspapers. More than $57,000 of the original stolen money, still bearing the distinctive markings that proved it came from the Brinks robbery. The discovery of the hidden money confirmed everything. The FBI had solved the crime of the century. But there was still one more twist to come. Of the $2.7 million stolen that night in 1950, only about $58,000 was ever recovered. What happened to the rest? That secret died with most of the robbers. Some spent their share before they were caught. Others hid it so well that it was never found. And some may have taken their secrets to the grave. By the end of 1956, 8 of the 11 robbers had been sentenced to prison. Stanley Gusciora died before he could stand trial. The remaining men received sentences ranging from 3 to 20 years. Justice had finally been served. The Brinks robbery became a legend in American crime history. It showed that even the most carefully planned crime could be undone by the most human of emotions. Greed had motivated the robbery, but betrayal had solved it. The FBI had learned valuable lessons about patience and persistence. They proved that no crime is perfect, no secret is permanent, and no criminal organization is stronger than the human heart. Loyalty can be broken, and when it is, the truth will always find a way out. Today, the Brinks building still stands in Boston's North End, but it serves as more than just a reminder of that cold January night in 1950. It stands as proof that crime never pays, and that the pursuit of justice never ends. The 11 men who thought they had pulled off the perfect crime learned the hardest lesson of all. You can steal money, but you cannot steal peace of mind. You can plan the perfect robbery, but you cannot plan for the imperfection of human nature. If you enjoyed unraveling this mystery, like and subscribe to Sherlock Mode.